Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's story took place in 2009. In 2009, a young man who usually used to hang out in a cafe, I would say a coffee shop, and this shop here in most of the countries, I would say in the Middle East, I don't know much about the other countries, but they do have a place where they serve shisha, or what do we call a hookah. So, what is shisha? It's actually a smoking device that is known also as hookah. So, this place here serves usually or mostly serves tea or coffee or hookah. People here, with all due respect, I mean, the ones that hang out are usually friends or men who are retired, who are, I would say, unemployed, or there are people who do come with their friends or colleagues and hang out for hours, but there are people who stay there for long hours because they have nothing else to do, with all due respect. Of course, a person with a family, or I would say work, wouldn't be hanging out in these places. So these places, I would say, are not regular cafes or restaurants. That's why they usually call it as a coffee shop. And well, we have to be very cautious because these places where adults, I would say, would hang out, men, teenagers also tend to hang out. And that shouldn't happen because they can get involved. I would say there would be drug addicts or drug dealers also hanging out in these places. I mean, people from all walks of life. In particular, we cannot point out on one. People who have nothing much to do, I would say. So this young man here actually used to sit beside a couple of, I would say, a group of old men who were retired, and used to hear their conversation. So, of course, the retired men have nothing else to do, so they used to get along with each other almost every day, talking about stuff like real estates and, I would say, banks, shares in stock exchange, everything which was related to money, I would say. Because it happens that when you retire, you plan either you plan to get into a business, you get a new job, or you do, I would say, nothing. But this is an option, but I do advise people to actually keep themselves going and keep themselves busy. This man here used to sit and hear their conversation. He was almost 25 years old. And these men were, of course, I would say, married and maybe grandfathers. When he used to hear their conversation, he used to be very, I would say, he used to notice their names, their professions. They used to talk to each other about these things. I would say he didn't take note of it, but his brain as a youngster, he worked very well of knowing who worked where, and their names and their family members and every other detail they used to talk or chat about. So here he thought that it was an opportunity to know them well by just listening. So what he knew from listening to these men was that they had money. They did have money, and they were planning or discussing on getting into a business, or, as I said, into stock exchange or other things, I would say. So this young man here went to his other friends who were in a diwaniyah. Diwaniyah, where usually young men hang out in Arab countries. So he went to Diwaniyah, and he had a couple of friends over there, and he said, "Do you like to get into a business?" And his young friends here said, "Business all at once? It requires money, or it requires loan." He said, "That's not what I'm discussing. I'm just asking you, would you like to be my partners in a business, in a specific business, which I'm about to start?" They said, "Of course. Of course, we would love to." "And how about the money?" He said, "That's none of your worries. I know from where to get the money and how to start the business." He explained them that goes to a cafe or a coffee shop, and there he knows, or he has seen, some of the old men, retired men, discussing about getting into a business, and he thinks this is an opportunity of using their young minds into something like how to get rich quickly or fast enough or easily. They always talk about stock exchange and business and getting into business. Seriously, they are ready to do whatever they can if they get an opportunity. So if they're greedy of doing so or getting the what we say profit out of their business, why don't we use them, that is deceive them, for our personal gain? So the question here again, how? And his plan was to get these men pay money for, I would say, something called bulk cash smuggling. Here his friends, they said, how would they agree? And would they agree? He was quite confident. He said, I'm very sure they will agree to this. I mean, it is a kind of smuggling. People know that. It's like money laundering, I guess. Unlike others, the only idea I have is what we read in the newspapers. It's something called cash smuggling. He went back to the cafe, and here he started regular conversation by saying hi and hello, introducing himself. And then they used to see him as a regular customer, so they said that why not talk to him if he's talking to us? I mean, talk back. Here the young man said that my friend actually he is involved in such a good business or trade that he is so rich, like a multi-millionaire. And here these men were like, how? He said, he's actually involved into something called like selling dollars or something, selling money. And they said, wow, we want to know more. We are very interested. We want to know more about this. So here he said, no. He paused actually, and then he said, no, I think I wouldn't talk about this. I shouldn't. And then it was like throwing a bait to catch a prey, because now they were more interested than ever. They said, no, please do continue and explain us. How does he sell dollars? So, well, he said, I would continue if you insist. And please, it's a secret. And if you cannot keep the secret, please do tell me. They said, no, that's okay. As long as it involves money, we are fine. So please do continue. Here he said, my friend actually has millions of dollars, but he cannot bring it, or he cannot change it into Kuwaiti dinars, because if he wanted to transfer the money into the bank, of course, he would be asked that how could a very huge amount enter his bank account. And of course, he has to give the reasons and the sources that are involved. And if he keeps more than what is the transfer, I would say the limit, he would be asked for the source of this income or the money coming from. And he doesn't want to get involved, of course, because it is, after all, it's smuggling, or the money is from illegal trade. When these men were hearing the conversation or the whole details of what was happening and what was required, I would say it was for them to get implicated somehow. Well, if they had to do the business with the man, when we say it was 1.5 million dinars would be actually be equal to $3 million. But the man was ready to pay $10 million. That means from 3 to 10, that's a lot. And of course, they were greedy to do so. I mean, the amount of money is ridiculously more. That's why it's illegal. Anyways, so here they said that we like the idea and we will go for it, but how do we know it's not a scam? How do you know this thing will actually work? They said that we want to try. He said, sure. And you can give whatever you want, and I'll prove you that what I'm saying is true and right, and it's not a scam. So these three men, actually, they were whispering and deciding what to do. And here they said that we are going to give you 1,000 each. That means 3,000 dinars. And of course, they will be getting $9,000. Not only that, after taking $9,000, they will go to the exchange shops and check, of course, exchange the money. And by exchanging the money, they would know that the cash given to them, the dollars, were real or fake. And of course, they were so desperate that they thought that the next step they will be taking after this deal goes right is buying a yacht or maybe a chalet and living the best retirement life ever. So, the dreams already started. This man here went back to his diwaniya, back to his friends, and said that they have fell for the trap. And these guys are ready to pay whatever they can. So you guys better get me the money you have. And I want to go back and, of course, go to the exchange, change the money to dollars, and trick these guys again or deceive them. The men were okay, they gave whatever they could. One of them gave them 500 dinars, 1,000 dinars, whatever they could collect. And here he went and got $10,000. He went back to the men and the old man and he said, "Here you go. Now, these are real $10,000. You can go and check." Of course, very confidently. Here the men, they went to the bank and they went to go and exchange the money. They found out that the money was real. The bank notes were original, not fake. He said the man has $11 million, means they can collect 1.5 million Kuwaiti dinars, and in exchange, they will get $11 million. So how will the thing work? What will happen is that they will collect the money and keep it in a bag, and they will deal in a way that they will exchange a bag against a bag. When they receive the dollars, they can easily check the money and they go their way and he'll go his way after taking the money the man will be giving, that is 1.5 billion dinars. The young man actually said them, "You have 2 weeks to get the money and we can finish with this deal." They said 2 weeks, of course, are not enough. The men here were against this thing. I mean, how can they actually get the money or gather the money within 2 weeks? So they asked that we need 3 to 4 weeks. Please, if you could. So it was a huge amount. So they had to maybe sell their cars, plots, farms, or apartments if they had, sell whatever they had, chalet, whatever. They had to sell whatever they had to actually gather the amount. There were 3 men, I would repeat, and 3 men were responsible to collect 500,000 each, which would actually be 1.5 million dinars. So they wanted more time. And the man here agreed to this thing. He said, "Okay, we will wait. You can give me a call actually whenever you're ready." So they started selling whatever they could, and to just get, I would say, 500,000 each, even if it was in loss. The aim here was to collect the money to actually get more money than anyone can dream of if it was a natural or normal business. So here he said, if you're done, we are going to make the deal in an apartment, because it's a case of smuggling. It's cash smuggling. We cannot do it in a coffee shop or somewhere outside. We have to do it secretly, and that's why it will take place in an apartment. So here the men were all ready to actually make the deal. And one of the men actually bought a banknote counter which counts bills. And some of the new actually devices also have a detector. I don't know about the old ones, but they have a detector for fake money. So they actually they decided to meet at a supermarket in Salmieh, and here the man would pick them and take them or they would follow him to his apartment, which was also in Salmieh. And they did. They got there and they followed him and they went to the apartment. When they got into the apartment, the man here welcomed them and they sat. The apartment seemed to be empty, but when the man closed the door, 5 men who were masked to conceal themselves and carrying weapons came along. And here was the time to panic. These men were, "What are you doing?" And they started panicking, of course. So these old men started begging that please do not kill us. The aim here was to just tie them and take the money and go and leave. That's it. So they tied the men on the chair. They tied their whole body, hands and feet, covered their mouth and left. Of course, they locked the door behind them. Here the men, I said they were retired. That means they were old. So some of them were like almost 70 or maybe more. So they were thirsty and they were tired, and maybe someone had blood pressure or any other disease, high blood pressure. So they started, of course, they couldn't scream. So they started moving their feet, knocking their feet onto the ground. They were knocking so badly and for a long time. And the good thing was that they didn't give up. Now the person who was living in the flat, below the flat, the apartment, was a man from Syria. And this man was, of course, hearing the sound and ignoring it. But for 3 hours, he said, there is someone upstairs who was literally either dancing or disturbing. I don't care, but I am very disturbed. So he went to the security of the apartment and said that you have to check out what's happening, because if you don't, I would take some action. The man here said, I'll go and check. He went upstairs and he knocked at the door several times. Here, the only thing he could hear, if he could get very close to the door, was people knocking and whining. So here he was knocking again and again because he couldn't enter the apartment. But when he thought that something is wrong, he literally broke the door. He broke the door and he found these men sitting on the chair all tied up. He went to them and untied each one of them. Well, they did call the ambulance and the police as soon as the ambulance arrived, and these men were taken, and they had to go to the police station and file a case against this man. And of course, explain to the police what had happened. So the police asked, do you know this man? They said, yes, we know him. We met him at a coffee shop, and he was actually a very kind person and a regular customer. We used to see him every once in a while. He actually became a friend and he started paying our bills, and we did the same. So that is the place we got to know this man. They said, okay, what's his name? I said, we are not sure, but we used to call him Bukhalid. They said, okay, this Bukhalid has any address or any other information? Do you have any other information? We do have a number, a telephone number. A picture? No. They said, okay, that would work. They took the telephone number and then the mobile number actually. And then they found out that the mobile number actually belonged to a person or a house worker who was a female and was registered on her name. The fact here was that she left Kuwait and she left from a while, and this man was actually using her mobile to actually fraud people maybe. So they tried to search more. They went into the apartment. They didn't find anything, any fingerprints or other traces that could lead them to the man himself. Then the police or the investigators said that, of course, you were in an apartment, and to rent an apartment, he has to submit his civil ID or his identification card, that is. And they said, yeah, we have to go and search. They went to the guard or the security guard of the building, and they said that, of course, this apartment has been rented, and of course, a crime has been taking place. So you do have the ID card or the civil identification card of the person who has rented this apartment, do you? He said, yes, of course I do. When he submitted the civil ID, it was written that it was on the name of an Indian worker. He was an Indian worker who was also not present in Kuwait and had traveled maybe a while ago or maybe months ago. So now the investigators were in a crazy situation. They thought the ones who have done this crime or this fraud, I would say, were quite clever or aware of what they were doing. Now, as I said before, there were no, I would say, evidence to what this man was or where he lived or his name. So they started checking again. They were going through the calls, their mobiles of the other 3 men. They couldn't find anything, and the case was about to close because there was no evidence whatsoever. And the investigators said, "This is our last try. Let's just try for the last time." They called the three victims again, and they said that, "Please explain us and go one by one through everything that had happened and where you guys were." They said, "We met at a coffee shop." They said, "Oh, well, we could go to the coffee shop and search if there are cameras, and that would be proof, or we can see what the person actually looks like at least." They went to the coffee shop. There were no cameras whatsoever, not near the coffee shop, not in the coffee shop. Then they said, "Where else?" They said, "Wait, how did you know where the apartment was? I mean, it was in Salmiya, but how did you go? Did you go directly, or did he give you of course, the address through the mobile or something?" They said, "No, he said us, why don't we meet at a supermarket, which is in Salmiya?" He said, "There we go." They went to the supermarket in Salmiya straight away, and they found out that, of course, there are lots of cameras everywhere near the supermarket, I would say. There were lots of cameras that they could check. And they did check. They found out that there was a car and the man. They found the car and the man. And when they checked the number of the car, they found out. The police here, after finding out who the man was, busted his house. And they arrested him. His house or his apartment was in Meshrif. They arrested this man and took him to the police station. And of course, they waited for this person to confess. But he rejected every word, that "I'm not the one." They got the victim, the three men over here, and they said, "Yes, this is the person who actually scammed us." They said, "Okay, fine. If you're not lying, we are going to bring the worker too." They brought the worker who worked in the coffee shop, and he said, "Yes, and this is our regular customer, and I know him very well." Now the man was like, "Yes, there's nothing else to do except to confess." And he did confess, and he submitted actually 250,000 dinars. Here he also informed the investigators that the other criminals, which were, I would say, his partners, the 5 other partners were one who was a lieutenant from the military forces, 2 were in the army, and 1 was a firefighter, and the other 2, including him, were unemployed. It was a great shock. At the same time, we could imagine who could actually plan and come out with such an idea, I would say. But there's no crime that is complete. The money was given to the rightful owners. And as about the sentence, they were sentenced according to their, I would say, and as for the sentence, they were sentenced accordingly. The one who had planned, the one who was holding the weapon. The only thing they could do here was thank God that they didn't kill anyone. Or I would say this case would be a completely different case. So that's it for today, and thank you for listening.